I want to tell you a story. Long before I knew how to do this, God was doing it. So a number of you know that this English-speaking congregation out of this church was started back in 1996. Back in 1996, I was 25 years old. And they took a guy who really had no idea how to do ministry, and they made him, I wasn't ordained at that time, so I was the first, pastoral intern to lead that congregation. So I was 25, and then, 2 years later, I got ordained. The next year, I got married, next year, I got ordained, right? So I was ordained at the age of 27. They laid hands on me at the age of 27. Still didn't know what I was doing. In my first year, this congregation was a lot smaller and a lot younger. It's a lot younger. And a young man came into the church, and he was Chinese. He was ethnically Chinese, but he was from Vietnam. So I think he was born in Vietnam, and this is the way what it was like back, in the 80s. Vietnam was a war-torn country, and America opened up its doors for certain refugees. And Alan, his family was not Christian. Alan's family, his name was Alan Ha. If you met Alan, if I was smarter, I should have dug up a picture of Alan. You guys could see him. Right? You could see his beautiful face. Alan was a short guy. He was about 5'4", right? Alan, had a little bit of a pudgy face, but don't let that. He was really athletic. Right? He was really athletic. He actually got a half-time baseball scholarship at Arizona State. Okay? So if you met him, you would know that he was a baseball stud. And since he's like 5'4", he's the kind of person nobody ever, everybody just overlooks in a room. Alan came into the church, and I don't know why, because I wasn't a particularly good preacher back then. Something about the way I preached the gospel, it lit Alan up. Right? Now, Alan was already a Christian. You know how he became a Christian? His family moved from Vietnam to San Jose because a church in San Jose, they volunteered to host refugee families. So it was a white family at a Baptist church off of Saratoga Avenue. It was like Saratoga and Prospect. You guys know where that is, right? That church today is called Westgate. It's a big mega church. But back then, it was called something Community Baptist Church. And it wasn't a mega church. It was a small church. Right? Relatively small church. Very humble church. And this white family took in Alan's family to help them, to adjust to America. And that family were Christians. And the mother of that family, the matriarch of that family, shared the gospel. His parents did not become Christians. They went to church for a while, but then over time they were like, yeah, this is whatever. Like Jesus, that's nice, but we got to make money, right? But the children, his sister and he became Christians. And I wish I could remember the woman's name. Alan called her his godmother. She was his spiritual mother, right? I kind of consider her Alan's Lois, right? Lois was Alan if Alan is a Timothy, and Alan is a Timothy. She was his grandmother. And then I got to be his father. So I'm a 24-year-old man pouring myself into an 18-year-old college student. He went to De Anza. His family was poor. So his father, it's actually really sad. His father didn't want to pay for the other half of the tuition. It was only a half scholarship for Arizona State. So his father didn't want to pay for the other half of the tuition so he could play baseball at Arizona State. So he went to De Anza and I got out. Or let's put it this way, our church got out. And Alan wanted to serve the Lord because he had powerful spiritual energy, right? And one of the obvious ways to serve the Lord was in our youth ministry. So then he went under Young. Young was our youth pastor, right? So he goes into Young. And then, within that, you get choices of which classes you want to invest into. Alan chose the 6th grade class. He chose 6th grade boys. I think there were like 4 guys. So here's Alan. He's like 18, 19 years old, and he invested into like 4 guys. And he didn't just teach them on Sundays. He would go pick them up on Friday afternoons, like feed them like French fries. Feed them French fries, and they'd go to his place and play video games and throw the ball around, and they would talk about, girls or like Jesus. In other words, they didn't just get a teacher, they got a brother. And what they didn't know was they were starting to get a father. And one of those 4 boys, you know him. His name is Frank. His name is Frank. And if you ask Frank why he never left our church, and if you ask Frank how he ended up becoming a pastor, why he loves the kids the way he loves them, it's because he knows what it's like to have been loved when he was in 6th grade by a young Chinese Vietnamese man named Alan. See how this works? Alan had his spiritual godmother, and then he had a very, very incompetent spiritual father in me. And then he had a wonderful trainer in Young. And then he became a spiritual father to Frank. And when I came back to this church, our youth group, let me tell you something, our youth group was in shambles. I heard a story that the year before I came to the church, that some kid was offering drugs at our youth retreat to the other kids. It was a scandal. It's like, that kid offered drugs to the other kid at the youth retreat. I was just like, oh gosh. And I knew that what was beautiful that was happening when Young was the youth pastor, I had kind of like died. And we needed a new youth pastor. And guess what? We already had him. Because exactly what Min Chung said, I didn't know it, but God gave it to us through Alan. So see this movement? See how this works? Alan wasn't a preacher. Alan didn't know the Bible very well, right? Alan was like an 18, 19-year-old kid. But he had a huge heart. And he loved, and when he looked at teenage boy, less younger than teenage boys, 6th graders, pimply-faced 6th graders, right? He did not look down on them. He loved them. He said, loving them in Christ, for Christ, is worthy of my time. And look at the fruit.